My wife sold her wedding ring to get a couple's tattoo with her ex-boyfriend. My name is Elliot. I'm 38 years old, work as a systems analyst, and live in a modest home in the suburbs of Ohio. I've always valued stability and order in my life. My wife, Wikipedia. We met through mutual friends and connected over our shared appreciation for the simple things in life. Our relationship wasn't a whirlwind romance, but rather a steady buildup of trust and mutual respect. We got married 6 years ago, exchanging vows and rings that symbolized our commitment to each other. A few months ago, during a typical morning routine, she mentioned it casually, as if she had misplaced a set of keys. I asked where she last saw it, and she shrugged, suggesting she might have taken it off during yoga and left it in the locker room. I didn't press further, choosing to trust her explanation. However, over the following weeks, I noticed subtle changes in her behavior. She became more protective of her phone, spent more time running errands, and started listening to playlists she hadn't touched in years. She also began wearing more makeup for casual outings. Individually, these changes seemed insignificant, but collectively, they formed a pattern that was hard to ignore. One evening, while scrolling through social media, I came across a photo posted by a local tattoo artist. The image showed two hands, freshly inked with matching tattoos, fingers intertwined. The caption read, "When it's real, it's permanent." I recognized one of the hands immediately, it was hers. The other hand belonged to her ex-boyfriend. The realization hit me hard. She hadn't lost her wedding ring, she had pawned it to get matching tattoos with her ex. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I began searching for local pawn shops that might have her ring. After a few calls, I found it at a shop across town. It was still in the display case, with the engraving I had chosen, Forever, E&M. I bought it back, not for sentimental reasons, but to have tangible evidence of her betrayal. I placed the ring and the receipt in a folder, along with printed screenshots of the tattoo photo. Then, I consulted a lawyer and began preparing divorce papers. I wanted to handle this situation with the same order and precision I apply to my work. When everything was ready, I left the folder on the kitchen counter and moved out while she was away. I didn't leave a note or send a message. I believe the contents of the folder spoke for themselves. I didn't expect an apology, and I certainly didn't wait for one. When I left the folder on the kitchen counter, I made sure it was placed in plain view, clean, unmistakable. On top, a printed copy of the pawnshop receipt, folded neatly. Beneath it, the divorce documents. No dramatic farewell letter. No angry texts. Just facts, carefully ordered like the rows of data I spend my workdays sorting through. I packed up my belongings that morning, documents, electronics, photo albums, the couple of pieces of furniture I'd brought into the marriage. Everything else, I left behind. Let her keep the house. I'd paid for most of it, but the emotional cost of fighting over it would have been higher than the property value itself. I wanted to exit without noise. No slammed doors. No arguments. Just closure. She came home around 1:45 p.m., grocery bags in hand. I watched from my car across the street. I saw her pause when she entered the kitchen. She looked at the folder, then glanced around as if half expecting me to pop out of a corner. Instead, there was only silence. She opened it. Flipped through the papers. Her body went still for a second before she pulled out her phone and started calling me. I didn't answer. Not the first call. Not the second. By the fifth, I turned my phone off entirely. I had already signed a lease on a short-term rental, a one-bedroom apartment on the quieter edge of town, overlooking the river. Simple. No clutter. No memories. I moved in with a suitcase, my laptop, and a pair of fishing rods I hadn't touched in years. I spent the first night there in near silence, broken only by the occasional buzz of my phone as the missed calls started to pile up. She left me a voicemail the next day. "You could have talked to me," she said. "We could have worked through this. A tattoo doesn't mean what you think it does." I didn't respond. Not out of spite, but because I'd already done the math. There wasn't anything to talk through. It wasn't about ink on skin. It was about choices. Secrecy. Intent. The next week, I focused on finishing the divorce preparations. My attorney, Mrs. Kelsey Renner, was methodical and patient, the kind of person who lets silence do most of the heavy lifting in a conversation. She reviewed the folder I gave her, the receipt, the screenshots, even the backup I had made of our shared cloud photo album. That was where I found several pictures Haley had taken but never shared, angles of her and her ex, candid and too close to be platonic, both of them smiling like nothing had ever gone wrong. Mrs. Renner barely blinked when I handed it all over. "You've documented everything clearly," she said. This is one of the cleanest cases I've seen in a while. You've given her very little room to complicate things. That was the plan. I'm not the type to raise my voice. I don't see the point in arguing once trust is broken. Words become noise. But documentation? That speaks loudly in silence. Within days, the formal petition was filed. Haley didn't respond right away. For about 48 hours, she went quiet. Then the messages began rolling in again. Are you really ending this over one mistake? I didn't think the ring would matter that much to you. You've always been so cold when it really counts. Each message peeled away another layer of the illusion I'd been living under. The idea that we were still the same people who had exchanged vows 6 years earlier was long gone. And in its place? Someone who sold a symbol of our commitment and got matching tattoos with the man she'd once described as a walking red flag. That Tuesday, I got a message from Nolan, a mutual friend we'd both known since college. He'd been invited to Haley's side of the post-breakup story. Apparently, she was telling people I had emotionally abandoned her long before anything happened with her ex. That I worked too much. That I shut down whenever she tried to talk. I didn't even get angry. I forwarded Nolan's message to my attorney and moved on. I wasn't surprised by the narrative she spun. When someone chooses to betray quietly, they often rewrite history loudly. And if there's one thing I learned from 6 years of marriage, it's that people will shape their stories to protect the version of themselves they want others to see. But the timestamps don't lie. The social media posts, the bank transactions, the pawn receipt, they don't lie either. And when you present facts without the drama, they speak volumes. That night, I went for a long walk along the riverbank. The apartment was quiet when I returned. No missed calls this time. Just a single text from her. You could have at least tried. I stared at it for a moment before turning off my phone again. Tried what? To fix what she'd already decided to break. To undo what she had so deliberately done? No. This wasn't about giving up easily. It was about recognizing when something had already ended long before the paperwork caught up to it. By the end of the week, the silence became its own kind of reply. I didn't need to say anything. The divorce papers had already said everything I wasn't going to repeat. Haley stopped calling after her 53rd attempt, yes, I counted. Or at least, I did until the 40th. After that, the buzzing became background noise. A sort of static that faded once I shut the phone off. I never blocked her. That would have given her something to hold on to. Something to spin into a story where I was erasing her. Instead, I let every call ring unanswered. Every message go unread. I left her with the silence she'd already created between us. A few days after the last voicemail, she sent one final message. No emojis. No punctuation. Just, I can't believe you didn't fight for us. I read it once, let it sit there on the lock screen, then turned my phone face down. Because the truth was I had fought. Just not in the way she meant. People like Haley often say they want you to fight for us. But what they really want is for you to fight them, to raise your voice, to beg, to chase after something they were already walking away from. So that when you finally break, they can point and say, see? You were the problem all along. But I never gave her that. Instead, I kept a ledger. Quiet. Precise. I didn't respond with accusations, I responded with action. I didn't scream, I stepped away. And the irony? That hurt her more than anything I could have said. My lawyer, Mrs. Renner, called me 3 days after the papers were delivered. She signed, she said simply. No contest. Not even a request for mediation. I remember just nodding on the phone. So that's it, then. Yes, she replied. And, for what it's worth, I think you handled this in the cleanest way possible. I appreciated her saying that, though I wasn't seeking validation. This wasn't a performance. I wasn't trying to be graceful or stoic or noble. I was just tired. Tired of pretending that something whole still lived in a house that had been slowly hollowed out from the inside. A week later, I visited my old house, not to confront, not to reclaim. I had forgotten one of my fishing reels in the garage, and I didn't want to leave anything behind, no matter how small. When I pulled into the driveway, her car wasn't there. The house looked different, though nothing had changed physically. The air felt stale, as if the place had absorbed all the words we never said, and they were still floating there, waiting for someone to open a window. I walked through the side gate, opened the garage, found my reel exactly where I'd left it. On my way out, I noticed the counter in the kitchen. The same counter where I'd left the folder. It was clear now. No folder. No ring box. Just a small bouquet of flowers in a mason jar. Her attempt, maybe, to rewrite the mood of the space. Too little, too late. On the way back to my apartment, I stopped at a small lake just outside the city. One of those quiet places no one visits on weekdays. I sat on a bench with the reel in my lap and watched the water ripple. And I let myself grieve, not for Haley, but for the version of us I had once believed in. That's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. It's not the act itself that breaks you, it's the quiet realization that someone you trusted had slowly replaced reality with illusion. That while you were focused on building, they were already finding exits. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt. But because I had been mourning this for a long time before it ended. You don't cry over ashes when you've already watched the fire go out. The next morning, I listed the ring for sale. I didn't want to put it back into another pawnshop, it deserved more dignity than that, even as an artifact of a broken promise. I found a private buyer through a local collector's forum. He was looking for a white gold engagement ring to propose with, said his fiancée loved simple, vintage styles. I told him the ring had history, but left it at that. He offered $1,200. Half of what I paid, but far more than it was worth emotionally. I accepted. With the money, I booked a weekend trip, just me and my brother, Warren. Fishing, no phones, no schedule. When I told him why, he just nodded. About time, he said. You've been holding everything in like a seal jar. Let it breathe. And I did. We spent 3 days on a boat, talking about everything and nothing. Casting lines, swapping stories, burning under the early spring sun. No messages. No reminders. Just water, wind, and the kind of silence that feels like peace, not punishment. When I got back home, I had a new message, this time, not from Haley. It was from the tattoo shop. Apparently, someone had sent them a message anonymously, letting them know that the couple in the matching tattoo post weren't exactly who they appeared to be. The artist had taken the post down. Too late, of course. I already had it saved in 3 different places: cloud, hard drive, and the same folder that held everything else. No, not out of spite. Just principle. Because you don't erase betrayal. You archive it. Not to revisit. Not to gloat. But to remember clearly who someone chose to be when they thought you weren't watching. Life didn't go back to normal after the divorce, but it did start to feel lighter. Not immediately. There were moments, here and there, where the weight of it all caught up with me. Not sadness, exactly. More like recalibration. You spend so long building a version of life with someone, it takes time to stop reaching for that extra mug in the cabinet. To stop expecting footsteps in the hallway. To stop looking at your phone wondering if she's going to try one last time. But those moments passed. The apartment became more than a place to land. It became mine. I started bringing in pieces of myself that I had left behind while trying to blend into our shared life: small framed prints I liked, a record player from my college days, plants that didn't need anyone's approval but mine. And I started journaling again. Not about her, about me. Not because I needed to heal, but because I wanted to see myself clearly again. Somewhere along the way, in trying to be the stable partner, the reliable one, the peacemaker, I had begun shrinking to fit the outlines of someone else's needs. Writing helped me remember the shape I was before all of that. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I bumped into an old neighbor while walking through a nearby park. He gave me that look, half curiosity, half hesitation. You could see the questions behind his eyes, but he kept it polite. I heard about everything, he said. Must have been hard. I nodded. It was. He paused, then added, Haley's been telling folks it all happened really fast. That you blindsided her. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. People see what they want to see. He nodded, and we parted ways. I didn't feel anger. Just a strange sort of detachment. Like hearing someone describe a movie they watched while you were living it. A week later, I received a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. Haley. She didn't start with dear. She didn't apologize. Mostly, it was a stream of justifications, a mix of reflection and revision. She said she'd felt disconnected for a long time. That she didn't know how to talk to me anymore. That reconnecting with her ex made her feel seen again. She said the ring was just a ring, not a symbol. She said she never meant to hurt me. And then, near the end, she wrote something that stuck with me. Maybe I made the wrong choices. But you always made me feel like there was only one right way to do anything. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in the same folder as everything else. The screenshots. The receipt. The cloud backups. Not because I plan to revisit them, but because, as I've learned, it's important to remember who people are, not just who they say they are when everything falls apart. I never wrote back. You see, the truth of it is this: endings don't have to be explosive to be complete. Sometimes they're clean. Quiet. Like shutting the door to a room you've already packed up. I kept the apartment for a few more months, then bought a small home on the edge of town. It's nothing fancy, a single-story place with creaky floors and a garden that's seen better days. But it's mine. And when I walk through the front door at the end of the day, I don't feel tension in the air. Just space. A few weeks ago, Warren and I took another fishing trip. This time, we didn't talk about the past at all. No rehashing, no questions. Just stories about growing up, about work, about where we're headed next. As we packed up the truck at the end of the weekend, he asked, "Do you think she ever really understood what she gave up?" I looked out at the lake, the light hitting the water just right. I think she understood just enough to regret it. But not enough to change. That night, back at home, I pulled out the folder one last time. Not to read through it. Just to confirm it was still there. Then I walked to the fireplace, opened the folder, and fed each page to the flame. Slowly. Intentionally. The pawn receipt. The screenshots. Even her letter. Not because I needed revenge. Because I no longer needed the reminder. There's a difference between closure and keeping a record of your pain. And I'd held on long enough. Not for her. For me. I let it burn, then sat on the couch with the windows open. The house was still. The kind of quiet I used to think was loneliness, but now it felt like clarity. Not everything ends with noise. Some things end with peace. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.